Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Brad Gotto, who's the owner of Fiat Wealth Management. Brad, welcome to the program.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Hey, I want to learn all about what you do and how you serve your clients, but I always love hearing the story behind the story. So give us a little bit of your background. What has your entrepreneurial journey been like to this point in your career? And at what point did you think, you know what, I need to start my own firm?
Loaded question. And so the short answer is I was not the kid that thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't grow up in a world where that was kind of a normal thing or normal thought. I didn't have parents that were entrepreneurs. Quite frankly, I don't even know if I could have defined what that meant. And so that was never kind of a lifelong dream. In fact, my degree is for ministry. I thought I was going to be a youth pastor for the rest of my life. And I knew I loved education. I loved educating people. And I just had this desire that if I know something of value, at least I think I know something of value, I love to share it. I'm not one of those people who likes to keep things in. And so the ministry fit both of those, obviously with my faith being very important to me. And then this idea of education fit really well with high school kids and some junior hires, although I tried to stick to high school as much as I could.
Yeah, we won't go into the reasons why there. The annoyance factor and the spitballs and
So I kind of stumbled, fell into this career 16 years ago. That's a whole nother podcast of how that transition happened. How do you go from being a youth pastor to a financial planner? But here I am. And it was in that process that, again, I knew I was at a big box firm, kind of told what to do, when to do, and that kind of thing. And it was at that moment that I just, kind of that season, I guess, is a better way to put it, that I just decided that I wanted to do it on my own because I wanted to be able to do what I thought was in my client's best interest. And quite frankly, I just thought there was a better way. And at that point, I still probably wouldn't have called myself an entrepreneur. I just knew that I wanted to do things differently. And I knew that if I wanted to do things the way that I thought made sense, I was going to have to be on my own. And so being independent away from kind of this big box firm, I thought was important. Now, looking back 16 years, I realized that was an entrepreneurial endeavor. But again, at the time, just not something that was in my purview.
Yeah. Well, it's always interesting to see, looking back, to go, ooh, you know what? Interesting. This led to that, and then that led to the other thing. And so, when you look forward, I'm sure you can really put some correlations into your leanings toward being a youth pastor, which is forward thinking, and then wealth. And you know what? In reality, money has such a huge impact on people at any age. I mean, hey, can I even afford to go to college? When I get out of college, can I afford to get married? When I get married, can I afford to? Money is a big impact in every single stage of the life, but especially when you look toward retirement. And I know that statistics are only statistics, but what is the current one where it's like, well, the average retiree only has, and the number that sticks into my mind is like 15,000 set aside for retirement. Is it still in that realm?
Well, and it depends on how you parse out the average retiree, and because they go married couples, they go male, female, they do all kinds of things. But the bottom line is there's a pretty dramatic amount of undersaving. But to your earlier point, I completely agree with you. I kind of joke around with people and tell them in my professional career, if you want to call it that, being a youth pastor, but my post-college career, my jobs or my career has taken me to, I would argue, the two most intimate area of people's lives, their faith and their money. So I've got them both covered. So that's been a fun journey, and the education and partnering with people in a meaningful way in those areas is powerful. It's great. I still to this day, I love it. I love sitting down face to face, even after 16 years with clients and watching kind of stress relieve off their face, things of that nature. That's what kind of keeps me going. But to that second point that we were making with retirees, I think the thing that we need to understand, and by we, I mean my industry, but by we, I also mean the average retiree, Mike, is this is a new concept. myself, I think we're really good at what we do here at Fiat. We have a completely proprietary process that we go through. But even us, who as a firm, we do this every day, and we focus in on this idea of kind of that backstage of life. This is new. This generation, these baby boomers, this idea of retiring in the early 60s, maybe 50s or whatever, and then having to live on a pile of money that they saved on their own primarily, because pensions are kind of a thing of the past.
Yeah.
And do that maybe for 20 or 30 years. It's never been done before. I mean, not really, not in any meaningful way. And so we're all kind of learning as we go. And I don't think that a lot of people that are now 50, 60 years old that are of that statistic that you mentioned, that don't have enough.
Yeah.
This wasn't like I know 40 years from now, I'm going to be in a world of hurt because this is how the world works now. And this is kind of the expectation.
Well, I think that, if we tie back in faith, Ecclesiastes teaches that there's nothing new under the sun, and there's a lot of, meaning behind that. But if we apply that to today, maybe there's nothing new under the sun regarding our money, because many times you have to look at it and go, it's how we use it. And there's plenty of new under the sun, quote unquote, because there's new ways to spend, and there's technologies and cryptos and all those things. There's always new. But the way that we can apply it is there's nothing new in the fact that you're going to need to plan for retirement. You're going to need to spend wisely. You're going to need to adjust your lifestyle now and later to make sure you have enough money to live. You need to make sure that your health is good so that you can live, the length of time you want to live. Man, there's a lot of things that goes into that. And one of the big things is, nothing new under the sun. There's a big word or there's a little word called tax, and has a big implication because it's always changing, and it just punches holes in that bucket. So talk a little bit about how you focus on taxes and bringing clarity around taxes, because it really is foundational.
That was great how you segued Ecclesiastes right into taxes. And you never even used the word Caesar to do it. That was a good transition. I like that.
Okay, cool. Hey.
So, at the end of the day, if you're going to stop working and the machine of, income monthly is going to stop coming in the door, and you've got to take a pile of money that you've saved and turn it into a paycheck, there's risks involved with that, right?
Yeah.
And some of them are obvious. I don't know what the market's going to do every single day. I don't know when I'm going to die. I don't know what inflation is going to look like, things like that. One that I don't think is explicitly as obvious, everybody knows they have to pay taxes. But Congress, in my mind, is a risk, because you have no idea what they're going to do with current tax law. And if anything's been consistent over the last 113 years, that they've been taxing you and I directly after the passing of the 16th Amendment, it's change. Yeah. All the tax rates do is change, and all the nuances inside the tax code, what you can write off, what you can't write off, what the standard deductions are, what exemptions are, things like that, to get you to kind of what your bill, because all it really matters is what's my bill at the end of the year. I ordered 4 entrees, an appetizer, and 2 drinks. What's my bill when I'm done eating my food? That's all.
Cut to the chase.
About is give me
right.
Give me the total. I don't want to know your food costs and how you got there and why your staff costs to run the restaurant. Just tell me what my bill is. And so that's the exercise that a lot of us go through in futility at the end of every year. The onus is on us, if you think, which is crazy, for us to figure out how much we owe the government. They make us figure it out. They don't tell us.
And then if we're wrong, we get penalized, but you didn't really tell us clearly. So, wow, we're at a loss.
Yeah. 77,000 pages if you printed out the tax code and all the rulings and everything else to go along with it. So
it's almost like in school when you turn in a paper, and I teach marketing for a few universities, and it's like we use this little thing called a rubric. And so you need to do this assignment and follow the rubric, which are the expectations. Right. But if you don't have any assignment instructions or rubric, and you just say, turn in an assignment, they're like, about what? No, just turn it in. Well, that's almost like the tax code. How am I supposed to understand 77,000 pages and hope to get it right without you getting mad and penalizing me? You need help. You need a guide.
You do, and the craziest part about it is as you go through your working years, a lot of people, W-2 income, and they just kind of withhold taxes throughout the year, and so it's kind of a done-for-you model, not completely, but as close as the IRS is going to get. Well, then you get to retirement, and most of the money you've saved is in IRAs and 401ks and 403bs. And it's been great because you've been able to put that money away and kind of defer all that tax till later. But now all of a sudden you're sitting on a pile of money. And for most retirees, it's the largest asset that they have is their IRA or their 401k, even worth more than their home. And at the end of the day, every time you pull a dollar out of that account, it has a tax impact. Not only can it have the impact of the dollar itself that you pulled, but it can have this cascading effect of it can start to affect how your Social Security is taxed. It can start to affect how much you pay in Medicare premiums. It can start to affect a lot of different things. And I always tell people that I meet, if you think taxes are confusing when you're working, wait till you retire. And you have to figure out the most efficient way to not only distribute your money from an investment standpoint of like the obvious things like, well, how do I invest my money when I'm retired? What's the appropriate portfolio? How much risk should I be taking? What's the safe withdrawal rate I can pull out every single year? Well, how about what's the most tax efficient way to get this money out? I've got a ton of money that I owe taxes on. You know, the IRA stands for individual retirement account. And I love to, again, joke with people that it's kind of an oxymoron or irony that it's an individual retirement account because it's not an individual account. You own it jointly with the IRS.
Yeah.
And the question really is how much of it belongs to you, right, and how much of it belongs to them? Well, it depends on when you pull it out, how you pull it out, and other sources you have coming in the door, and what that bill is going to look like at the end of the year. And so that's really where we dive in deep with the families that we serve is trying to figure out the most efficient way, not just from the investment standpoint and the obvious risks of retirement, but how do we disinherit the IRS as much as possible and stop tipping them at the end of every year because we're doing it inefficiently.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, that silent partner or stop tipping them. Well, you know, and that just kind of harkens back to that analogy of the bucket and the holes. You know, you can't plug up every hole because taxes are there, you know, and unless you're the elite of the elite, you're going to pay taxes. But how can you lessen them as much as possible? How can you mitigate them as much as possible? And you know what? In your working years, maybe you didn't pay as much attention because, you know, money's coming in. But in your retirement years, you don't have many options. When the Fed changes this or the tax rate goes up, now all of a sudden it hits you in the gut. So what are some ways you work with your clients to help them make sure that they're getting the best, you know, plan moving forward tax-wise?
Yeah, well, we have like I said before, we have a proprietary process that we call the retirement renovation process. And a big piece of that is to lay out an estimated tax liability every year for the rest of their life. And I know that sounds daunting, but that's why we do it. We don't ask them to do it. We're not like the IRS where we ask them to prepare their own taxes and then get back to us and we'll tell them what they owe. It's the opposite, where we're going to do it all and we're going to build it out. And the reason we go that far with it and build out a kind of an estimated tax return or 1040 or however you want to put it every year for the rest of your life is because at the end of the day, if I'm going to map anything out or I'm going to, you know, as an architect in our retirement renovation process, we use the term blueprints all the time. If I'm going to give you a set of blueprints and kind of map this out, I got to know what you want and I got to know where you're going. And so like if you were to call me and say, hey, Brad, how do I get to your house? I need directions. Well, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, well, where are you?
Where you at? Yeah.
I can't tell you where to go until I know where you're at. In order for us to figure that out, we really have to have a long-term view of your family's tax liability. We can reverse engineer that into decisions you should be making today to minimize this overall impact over the next year, 5 years, sometimes even 10 and 20, 30 years of your life. And so part of our process is to build that entire thing out and then start developing income plans that aren't just investment efficient, but are tax efficient. And a lot of times what that looks like practically, to give a real life example, is an IRA exit strategy. When's the best time to pull the money out? Because it's not a matter of if it's going to be taxed, it's just a matter of when and at what rate. And a lot of times the right time to pull money out of an IRA has nothing to do with when you need to spend it or when you need it for income. From a tax perspective, it may be we're going to pull out an extra $100K this year and pay the bill on purpose and then just put it in a different bucket that's an after-tax bucket, so we're kind of off the grid with it because we know we're going to spend it later, but the tax bill is cheaper this year than it's going to be in 5 years based on some stuff that we've laid out. So it's all about developing a plan of how to exit your tax liability the most efficient way possible.
And I love your analogy of renovation, retirement renovation, and it's like kind of makes you think about it. Like, give us a little. You already got the house, it's built, but now we're going to renovate. We're not going to move. We're not going to, abandon this structure. We're going to just renovate it. We're going to polish it up and make it a little bit better. Well, your retirement plan, don't feel bad. It might not need to be scrapped and scraped to the ground. Just might need to have a little polish and a little bit of, sparkle here. So let's look at a renovation. And before we start, demo day, as they say on the TV shows, we're going to lay out a blueprint. So don't worry, we're going to be arm in arm, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. And I have no clue of your process, but I'm only assuming that this is the case. So don't worry. We're not going to wreck your retirement plan and then go, oops, we can't fix it. We're going to show you what we recommend. And if you don't like something, we're going to erase it out and tweak this until we get the blueprint the way that we all feel comfortable. And then once that happens, we either go forth and do, or we go, don't worry, we'll do it for you. And that becomes a really neat process, because I think people can relate to show me the way, give me the blueprint.
Yeah. Well, to kind of kill off the analogy, if you think about it, and I'm painting with a broad brush, and so I realize not everybody's story looks exactly like this, but at the end of the day, if you bought a home in your working years, a lot of people are buying it for families, and it's built or designed, or you bought a home that was built or designed to hold your family and kind of for that stage of life. Well, now that you're retired, that's not the stage of life you're in anymore. It's not as important to get 5 bedrooms. Maybe now you only need 3 bedrooms. Maybe now the second level becomes, I don't really want that because I don't want stairs and I want something that I can kind of get old in. And so we need to kind of renovate the home for the phase of life that you're in. And so when you start thinking about that relative to your finances, you're in the accumulation mode. And when you're in accumulation mode in your working years, you're just trying to save as much as you possibly can and put money away and have good overall diversified portfolios that you're just kind of leaving alone and letting the market do what the market does. And you close your eyes and you hope when you get to 65 years old that, there's enough to do exactly what you want to do. But then when you get there, it's literally the exact opposite. You're not a saver anymore. Now you're a spender. You don't have kids in the house. You're not working 40 hours a week. It's like literally the opposite. I'm not working. There is no kids. I have to completely renovate everything that I've done. Because I'm literally going the opposite direction now.
And that might mean looking at another R word, risk. You might need to fine tune and adjust the risk that you've been, allocating over the years, because now you're in a different stage of life.
That's exactly, we bucket that. We have a kind of a bucket strategy of risk where it's all based on time and when the money is going to be spent and how much risk you should be taking. But again, that's all part of that renovation. It's all part of the process that we help lay out. Because again, unlike the IRS, we don't expect you to figure this stuff out on your own.
But when you work with someone and you explain things, people are knowledgeable enough to go, ooh, I couldn't have come up with that on my own, but it makes sense. I'm understanding. I'm tracking with you. Please continue. That's good. So I think that it's not rocket science, but you couldn't put a blank piece of paper in front of someone and go, do it. But yet, if you laid it out and sketched it out and or not sketched, but I mean, like a nice blueprint, they could go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, of course I need to do this. And oh yeah, I do need to plan for, of course I have, had 4 kids and now I don't. So I'm going to have a need for whatever now coming up. So I think that so many times clarity and planning go hand in hand, because you think about, okay, I can do that. And just don't tell me, 9 miles ahead. Just tell me what I need to do 100 yards ahead, because I can do that piece of it. But I know I'm heading in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. It's just, again, from a mapping perspective, retirement could be a very long thing. And so I live in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. If somebody were in Dallas, Texas, and called and said, hey, Brad, how do I get to your office? Well, begin with the end in mind. The end of my office, you got to get on Interstate 35 and head north. And for about 17 hours, that's all you got to do. Yeah. Right. And so we need to figure out where true north is. We need to figure out the general direction we need to head. So that's where that big picture planning comes in. Yeah. But in the micro, driving down the interstate, yes, you're going to go north for a lot of hours, but that doesn't mean you can let go of the wheel, right? You got to have those micro adjustments along the way. And that's really where we come in that partnership, is just to make sure that we're watching those micro adjustments and kind of keeping you in the middle of your lane. We're not veering too far away from where we're trying to get to.
So what is the typical type of client you're working with? They're using the house analogy. Are they new married, getting ready to build a house, so they need a starter home? Or are they, empty nesters and they're getting ready to downsize and they need to renovate their current structure because they're in a house? But, so what kind of clients are typically the ones that you're serving?
Yeah, it says it right in the name, right? We're in that renovation stage. Like the kids are moved out. You're getting ready to retire, or you're already retired, and you're trying to figure out kind of this second stage of life. You're not climbing the mountain anymore, you're descending the mountain, and you need to figure out how to get back down the other side. And so we specialize not in the accumulation phase of life, but we specialize in the distribution phase. In other words, we like to say we teach our clients how to spend their money, which is the more professional way to say it. Internally, what we love to say is we teach our clients how to party. Because at the end of the day, a confused mind always says, right. A confused mind always says no. And what that means for the average retiree, and what I've experienced and why we focus on this so heavily, is that the average retiree doesn't live the lifestyle that they want or could, because they have fear. And that fear and greed are the two strongest emotions that we have as human beings, and they drive almost every decision that we make. And given that fear is such a strong emotion, if you fear running out of money, if you fear the markets, if you fear the economy, if you fear your longevity, if you fear, the need for care and healthcare and these sorts of things, what ends up happening is it paralyzes you, and you don't spend your money and that you saved and you worked very, very hard for. Yeah. And then those same people end up, at 85, 90, 95 years old, and you get an opportunity to talk to them, whether they're kind of, living their last days at home, or they're in some sort of place where they're receiving some care. A lot of them say the same thing. They're just like, I wish I would have done this.
Yep.
I wish I would have, not been so fearful of this. I wish. Yep. And so I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that our mission with the families is to teach them how to live their best life, whatever that means to them.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm a man of faith, and so I think a lot of that goes into it for me. But
100%. Yeah. Well, and you know what? Have you ever heard this before? What does FEAR stand for? FEAR, false expectations appearing real. A lot of times people don't know what they don't know, so they fear that, what if? Fill in the blank, whatever it is. Yep. What if I won't have enough money to retire at all, or to live the life I want? And what if they don't even know the life they want? And in a sense, Brad, it becomes a life coach. Because it's like, well, what do you want? I don't know. I've just been nose to the grindstone all these decades. I don't even know what I want in my retirement. Well, I guess I want to kind of relax a little bit and do a little travel. But what does that really mean? Do you want to travel all summer every year? Do you want to only do – what does that really mean? And so I find that so many people these days, like I think we mentioned a few minutes ago, people aren't getting the pensions they used to. They're not working the 30 years getting the gold watch. They're retiring at a certain age, but it might even be at an earlier age than statistically is normal, because they're just tired of the grind, and they're just going to go and do something else. They're going to start another chapter and do some consulting and work 3 days a week, and that feels like retirement for them. So it almost is like, they're ratcheting down. They're not really going from full-on working to full-on retirement. Do you have some clients you're working with that factors in? You're going, okay, well, if that's the case, here's what we need to do.
Oh, for sure. At the end of the day, a lot of the families that we serve, it's the modern generation tends to move jobs a lot. But I still have a lot of families where they had a job for 20 years or 30 years, or they were at least in the same industry for decades. And a lot of their identity in life is wrapped up in that job. Yeah. And so they go to retire and they kind of lose some sense of purpose. They lose some sense of identity, and they really don't know what to do with their time. And a lot of them end up going back to work, not because they have to anymore. The paycheck is not a necessity to pay their bills, but it's something that they enjoy. It's something that they have identity in. And so that becomes a pretty big part of the overall plan. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all has to be about, right? Is your values that you have in life should drive your money decisions, not the other way around. And in other words, your money shouldn't be driving your values. And what I've found in my 16 years is that if you don't have a purpose and you're not intentional about the ways that you spend your money, that it just kind of happens, and your money ends up driving your values and not the other way around. And so we spend a lot of time in this renovation process, getting to know the families, asking tons of questions, some of them hard, but trying to figure out what those values are so that at the end of it, they end up with a home that's exactly what they want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when it comes to money, a lot of people just focus on the wrong things. And I blame my industry for it sometimes. They're focused on the number, how big their portfolio is, what the number is. They focus on things like rate of return. They focus on short-term blips in equity markets. And they use a lot of that information to drive decisions of, one, how they interact with their pile of money, their savings, and two, how they hire or fire professionals in their life, specifically financial advisors. And at the end of the day, if that's how you're making decisions, that's always going to be a fear-greed mentality, right?
Yep.
I'm fearful of missing out, but I'm also fearful of the market going down, and the fear of missing out is because of greed. And if that's kind of the relationship you have with the money that you've saved, you'll be the person, in my experience, that doesn't end up spending any of it, and also probably doesn't plan efficiently to give it away.
Yeah.
So even if you don't spend it, I know we all have, like, I doubt that our least favorite Uncle Sam, is who we want to be our primary beneficiary of everything that we've saved. And so regardless of how you choose to spend it, on yourself or on your family or on a charity, it's just important to make sure that the decisions you're making are actually getting you to the outcomes that you want.
100%. Well, Brad, I think that if anyone is listening to this going, a couple of those little nuggets resonate with me, maybe I need to get a little second opinion or see how my retirement can be renovated. What does that blueprint look like? What's the best way someone can reach out and learn more, and then reach out and connect with you and maybe set up a time to chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So all three of those things: one, all of our contact information; two, all the information about our process and the details of that retirement renovation process, that proprietary process; and then three, able to schedule a visit. That all can happen on our website. And the website's Fiat, FIATWM.com, FIATWM.com.
Awesome. Well, Brad, thanks so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun conversation. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.